So before we get started, Diane, is there anything that you want to say up front, or do you want to just dive into reviewing birds? I
I,
will say this.
yeah, yeah. Anybody that's interested or knows someone interested, have people contact me or Cheryl, who's on the Zoom also, because having had to adjust the date a little bit, we don't really know how many people will be able to help this year. But it means we get a few of our leaders like Karen and Mike when we changed the date, and Doug. So it turned out that the date in mid-January was difficult also. And so we made a quick switch. We hope you'll join a team, and we may need to move a few people around to be sure nobody goes out alone. So let's go for it, Karen.
So all of the other photos that you're going to see tonight, Mike and I took, except this one. Ryan
Aha.
Bolander shared this on Sunday at our photography group meeting, and I just thought it encapsulates what's is so exciting to me about the bird count, because these are trick birds. So for those of you who know a lot about birds, don't give it away. But if you want to write some things in the chat or even say things out loud that you notice without giving names away, what's different about these two birds? They're not the same bird.
The ascension was a warbler.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you know?
Somebody said warbler. How do you know?
Head shape.
The beak.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
beak shape's different.
Yeah.
Okay, so is anybody not seeing the bird picture? Because I'm seeing the participants.
Oh, you are.
Yeah,
Maybe that
I
has
can
to.
see the birds just fine.
okay, that's the main thing. I'll listen.
And I can only see a few of you when you talk, but hi, Mike, and nice to see you. And hi, Nicole.
On the upper right, there's a view
Yeah,
thing, and you set it to gallery or side by side gallery or side by side speaker.
well, gallery just lets me see all of you, but smaller.
Right, but you want side by side or
Hmm.
I think even standard will do it.
Well, those aren't options for me, but
Oh,
please
sorry.
go ahead. If I just wanted to know if there was anybody else that was not seeing the bird pictures.
Okay.
And it sounds like you're good, so I'll play with it and see where I get. Thanks.
Sure.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, so that is correct. The one on the left is a warbler. It's an orange crown warbler, and the one on the right is a lesser goldfinch. So that I loved this shot and asked Ron if he wouldn't mind if we shared it, and he sent this to me yesterday. But the thing that I'll start off with a reminder, we've got 10 territories and a lot of different habitat to look at. So that's one of the things that I try to think about most is where are you? Where are you looking?
God.
That will really determine a lot of the birds that are typically there. So let's start in a meadow with a bird that has the word meadow in its name. Here's a western meadowlark. I often see them going in that direction with the tail, usually flying away from me. But if you're lucky enough to see them from the side or they turn around and look at you, you'll see this gorgeous yellow on the front. And something that was kind of a surprise to me is that the meadowlark is in the blackbird family. And these are the other blackbirds that we'll see at Sea Ranch. And I've got one with a little asterisk on down in the lower right-hand corner, but we've got brown-headed cowbirds, Brewer's blackbirds, red-winged blackbirds, and the tricolored. The tricolored, it's a species that's in decline and one that we hope that we'll get to see, but it's not a guarantee on the bird count. So that's definitely one to be looking for. Most often seen in the meadow. Here's what's surprising. These are the females. So in the meadowlark, the male and the female look fairly similar. Not at all with the other ones. So I'll go back again so you can take a look. There's the males. And then here come the females. They're harder, definitely more challenging. And I still get tripped up on these, which is why I like taking pictures and going home to look at them. But bill shape, and then some of the streaking, the eyes can give it away. The more you can look for those kind of details and even talk it through, sometimes even out loud as I'm looking through my binoculars, I'll be talking to myself, describing what I'm seeing, and that can often help me get through these and get to the correct ID.
Here, I
But-
can ask you a question.
Yeah, sure, please.
So the brewer's blackbird, the female doesn't have the crazy yellow color eyes, but it has that white ring on the outside.
Yeah, so watch, take a look. Yeah, it's vivid yellow in the male, but it's a brighter eye than the blackbirds, but it does have a ring to it. Yeah,
Can I ask a question?
of course.
Are the Brewers Blackbird the ones that always hang out at the coffee shops?
Well, a lot of these can be likely characters for the coffee shops, but yes, the brewers, I see
I
brewers.
mean, like at
drinks.
Two Fish, they're always, that's amazing. And
Yeah.
somebody once told me that they were brought over from England by somebody who wanted to have some kind of a bird in a park. I don't know if that's true or not.
That
That
would be
might be-
Sherman's.
Yeah, I think you might be this. Diane, are you saying starlings? Are
Yeah.
you saying, yeah.
European starlings,
Yeah, and you'll see some starling photos. They also frequent the
right?
coffee shops, surf, the supermarkets. Yeah, all of
Yeah.
those.
As a starlings, it's just his yellow eye caught my.
Yeah, and the starlings will have a light bill. I have pictures of those
Okay.
later too. One other bird that I wanted to note, and note the asterisk on this one, that the northern mockingbird will also, you see them flying away from you often, and they'll flash white on the tail, but they also have white on the wing. And then if you take a look, they have a long bill, not as long, and not as light as a meadowlark, and they're grayer overall. They don't have that nice patterning that just blends right into the meadow. They just look a little bit more gray. And the asterisk is that it's not a rarity, but it's one that we're not always guaranteed. Sometimes you'll hear Diane and Cheryl sending people back out to look for a mock.
Whoops, I better let David know.
And I've had really good luck with them lately in the leeward meadows. So I can't remember who's got that group, but that is a good spot for them right now at Sea Ranch.
Karen,
Yeah,
is that the one that was before that we saw the back of? Was also Northern Mockingbird? Yes. Okay.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
the back and the front. Okay.
yeah, and see those bright spots on the wing that I notice those even more than the tail. Sometimes the tail might not always be quite so flared. The meadowlark will perch and just like flit its wings, where the mockingbird, you really only see it when they're flying from place to place.
Okay.
And then here's two other, the phoebes are almost everywhere, the black phoebe, but the Say's phoebe, I think of them as primarily in the meadows. And we've got one in our meadow, just almost right in front of our house above Shell Beach, and kind of one-eyed Jack right now. Beautiful, beautiful birds. They'll often fly out, catch an insect, and then fly back to where they originated. So that's a good one to be able to get good looks and good photos of, just because of their flight pattern or behavior, which I would say next to habitat, that's another really good thing to pay attention to, is how birds are behaving. So here's another tip for meadows. And it's to look up, not just down. So often in the treetops, you'll see a raptor like this one. And we've got amazingly 12 diurnal raptors, which means they're hunters during the day. And we've got a real range of looks and behaviors too. But the red tail I have outlined, since that's the one, I think the joke always is, right, Diane, that try to figure out why you're not looking at a red tail.
Right.
Something
Right.
like but they're one of our big birds. And here are two things to look for, but they call it the shoulder of the bird, but right on either side of the head, when they're flying over, you'll see these dark patches. And Diane, do you want to say it so I don't pronounce it incorrectly? Whatever that.
The patagial line?
There we go. Yes. So
There's
that is a good.
Patagium or a patagial line that you look for right along the front edge of the wing is another good clue that you've got a red tail.
Yeah. And I've made a birder friend in Canada who just loves the red tails of the West because there's so much variation. And in the belly band is a good place where you'll see a lot of variation, but that also is a characteristic or a marking of a red tail hawk. So this kind of dark head, strip of light, dark across the belly, and then light again. So if you look back at that photo now of it up on the tree, you don't really see, it doesn't have its wings open, so you can't see those patagial marks or bars, but you can make out, even at that distance, a bit of a belly band. So dark head and belly
I have a
band.
bit of a belly band.
Yeah, okay. So I've highlighted these next three because even though all of these are raptors, the kestrel and the merlin and the peregrine are all falcons. So in flight, they look a little bit different and they have a couple of characteristics. I mean, they're fast flyers, especially the peregrine. I think it's something like the fastest
Yep.
animal planet or something, right? Yeah, it's like over 200 miles an hour that they fly. But note the spotting on the wings, really highly patterned wings, and they're more angular, so kind of pointed at the, do they call that the shoulder? Just kind of hunchy, pointed wings. And the merlin also flies by very, very fast. This, I have to give a shout out to Mike for this shot of a merlin. We were in Cape May in October, and we were at a hawkwatch platform, and there were 41 merlin flying over in the course of just a few hours. It was really exciting to see, but he got a great shot of that one. And then also with the kestrel, I'll call out, this is a behavior that is very characteristic of these two birds. One thing that I'm noticing that I didn't notice before, do you see in this photo, there's some brown on the chest of the kite and even kind of a hazy looking eye. This is a juvenile bird. They get red in the adults and then wouldn't have any brown on the chest. But the thing that I wanted to point out about this too is they both hover over our meadows. And these are the only two birds, only two raptors that'll do that. Sometimes other birds, if they're out in the wind, look like they hover, but these two birds really hover. So that's a fun way to know what you're looking at. Another very distinctive behavior when I think about raptors is that of the northern harrier. Love these. And they will just soar pretty low over the meadows and they're listening for the prey. And a distinguishing marking on that one is that white strip at the base of the tail. It really stands out once you start to look at them. And when a male, I don't have a picture of a male, but they call them the gray ghost. And they'll be really, really light and gray. They also have black on the tips under the wings. I could have put that. Mike just got a good photo of one for the first time. That I forgot to add that. But the harrier is just gorgeous. So, oh yeah, so let's take a look. I didn't put both of these. If you're new to raptors, the Sharpshin and the Cooper's hawk are notoriously hard, even for experienced birders. But I just wanted to show you in these two photos how it can be a little overwhelming with immature to adult birds. So this is the same type of bird, both Cooper's hawks, but a young bird on the left and a mature bird on the right. So a lot of things change. But birders talk about the Cooper's hawk as having thicker legs, streakier breasts when they're young, an angrier expression, a flat head. None of these things alone can really help with an ID, but it's the more you add these things up. They talk about a rounded tail, but tail feathers can get worn. They talk about white. You can kind of see a little bit of white on the base of both of these birds, but this one I would really recommend going to All About Birds and looking at a lot of different pictures of Cooper's hawks. One characteristic that I have really liked is in the adult is there's a gap between the cap and the gray on the back. And in the Sharpie, it's continuous. But these are fun ones. I mean, every time I encounter one, I chalk it up to more and more experience. And Teresa and I were on a walk together not too long ago and saw a Sharpie right above Shell Beach. And it's all no, it was a Cooper's. But always fun to try to figure out what it is you're looking at. And so I upped our diurnal raptor by 2. These are both special. And notice I put an asterisk down by the bald eagle too. Not a rarity, more often in the river, up in the estuary by the park, but sometimes we do see them on the ranch. We'll definitely want to note those if we see them on the bird count. But the ferruginous and the pygmy owl also hunt during the day. Our other owls don't hunt during the day, but the pygmy owl does. And the ferruginous, we're not guaranteed to see these either, which is why I'm calling those to our attention, just to be extra aware if you happen to see these two. Fun sightings. And these, I want you to note, I have never seen a burrowing owl on Sea Ranch. That photo was taken in Colorado, but Rich Trissel actually saw one recently kind of up a little bit north by the estuary. So be on the lookout. It is definitely an unusual, and I'm putting all of those owls to our attention because the 2 photos on the right are the only ones we've ever taken on Sea Ranch. All of the other ones. Susan got one. Wasn't yours a saw-whet owl, I think, in your driveway or something? Or in your mat? Anyway.
There was a saw-whet owl near Long Meadow, and where the burrowing owl used to hang out is up at the north end near like Rock Cod and Buckeye, and he was in the storm drain,
So
which
neat.
they are known to use as temporary burrows.
Yeah.
So it's possible. Keep your eyes open.
Great.
Michelle's saying there's a pair of great horned owls next to the TSRA office.
Ooh. Oh, wow. Oh, that's exciting.
Great.
Yeah, thanks.
A plus for working for TSRA at the office.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah. So these technically are considered large waders, which I think is really funny. They have very diverse diets. I see some occasionally the great egret will be out on the kelp, floating out on the kelp and fishing. And I've seen the heron down in the tide pools, but I've seen them eat insects, fish, frogs, like you name it. They eat gophers, all all kinds of things. But the great blue heron and the great egret are a lot of fun, and I most often associate them with our meadows, even though that's not what they would say in the guidebooks. Okay, now we're switching habitat. So what do we see? This one I took the day before, just a couple days ago. This was right off of near Pelican. So not birds, there's kelp, and then there's some grebes. There's two little grebes out there, and sometimes these birds can be really small and the weather can be really overcast and it's hard to distinguish. But in total, we have 6 types of grebes here. And we'll go through each one and just look at a couple of their characteristics. So these close-up shots, I'm going to say this for grebes and loons, Bodega Bay is a great place to go and see them up close when the water is still. It'll be a rare day when you can get this close to a grebe at Sea Ranch. Does happen, but probably won't happen on the bird count. But with these two, the things that that I think of, then Diane, you should definitely chime in here, but when they're on the water, I think a horn grebe looks like a gear shift like in a car. It's flat on the top of its head, and the white on its cheek is just a little bit brighter, less muddy. They don't have tails that really stand out. They just are kind of little puffs in the water. Eared grebes, sometimes you see more than one, and a lot more than one, like 20, and they'll all disappear at once. They dive under for a while and then they'll pop back up. I don't know. I think these two grebes are just so charming. They're very, very fun. And there's some, I can't remember, it was in the Mendocino, they have some cute saying about the rear, the puffy rear of the grebes, especially
Are
the
the eyes typically different? Are they typically darker on the horn grebe than the eared grebe? Or is it
I don't think so. And I mean, you don't, it's so seriously, this is like, this is Mike's giant lens and the birds are really close.
Yeah.
I never get to see their eyes like this. It's more from a distance, I would say. But I don't know. It's a good question if they are really distinguishable in the eye.
Right. So if you can see the face, though, the eared grebe has dirty ears. It's got gray that comes around the ears. And generally, the eared grebe, it sits a little higher and puffier body. And that's what Mendocino folks were saying. Look whether it's flat or look whether it's a little puffed up. That may help.
Yeah. And then here's one that's going to make you think it's a loon. At least it makes me think it's a loon all the time. And this is the redneck grebe. And I include these photos just so you can see when a bird changes position, it really changes its look. But this one has a pretty long neck. You can usually make out some kind of yellowish on the bill. And as the season goes along, the neck will get more pronounced in the red. But on a gray day, it's not going to look really red. It'll look like this. Here's two beauties, and here's one where you really can tell the eye will change. If the eye, and I'm just putting 2 arrows to call your attention to the bill color differences and where the eye sits. On a Western grebe, the eye is going to be up in the black. If the eye is in the white, it's a Clark's grebe. And I put an asterisk on that one just because we see less Clarks. And If you have places that you like to go and see these, add those to the chat or say
Mm.
something. I love seeing these, and I've seen them recently at Stengel, but I think of them, the best place to see them is actually at Gualala Point
Okay.
for me. And Clark's, I just see more Westerns than Clark's.
Yeah, so does everybody else.
Yeah. Okay. And here, so the one on the right is not a photo taken at Sea Ranch. That's taken in Marin. But the pied-billed grebe is one of our littlest one. And the color on the right is what happens to them in the breeding season. And they get that stripe on their bill that's really a distinguishing characteristic, but they lose that in the winter. So they're kind of a reddish brown, small little bird. Most often seen in the river. I have seen one in the golf course before. So that would be another place on Sea Ranch to see them. And then here's the loons. We've got 3 types of loons that we see most often. And this photo that I'm including is one just of, I think of it as loon behavior. When you see a big bird swimming along with its head in the water, I think there's a good chance you're looking at a loon. And this is actually a common loon that's doing this, but here are the 3. And they can look really different too when they're kind of going in and out of their breeding plumage, but they nest inland. So we kind of see them on either side of breeding season, and they look really similar. So they're sometimes hard to distinguish. But the red-throated loon will generally have a bill that's upturned.
Mhm.
The common loon, it's just big, knobby head, thick bill, usually holds it horizontal or parallel to the water. And then the Pacific loon, sometimes you'll see this kind of airbrushed gray look to it, but sometimes they've been looking really scruffy and sort of hard to distinguish for me recently, and unless I have photos. But these 3 are ones to look for. And now sticking close to shore, this one was taken near Solstice. There's a couple of rocks that is great for cormorant practice. And there are 2 types of cormorants here. Can you tell? Does the one that's different stand out? So here I'm showing you 2 things to look for on the Brandt's cormorant. There's a white patch on its cheek and a slightly thicker bill. Compare it to the bird on the right. That's a pelagic cormorant. They have a really kind of pencil thin bill. In the breeding season, you'll see 2 white patches on their tail, but they're not doing that now. So they're all just going to look like dark black birds. But it's really in the head that they look most different. So here are our 3 types of cormorants together. The Brandt's with that white patch. They'll get a gorgeous turquoise in the breeding season. Kind of what's it called? The the thing under there.
It's a
There we go.
gular patch.
That's really exciting to see in the breeding season, but they don't.
What's it called, Diane? Gular?
Gular.
Gular?
Patch. Yeah.
Okay. Gular patch. Thank you.
And they throw their I love watching them at the up above the hole in the head at Bodega. You kind of go up and they'll sit on these rocks and they throw their heads up and stick their tail in straight up, kind of as a mating ritual. And you see this fabulous turquoise. They're really They're really pretty birds. And then we've got our double crested,
Mhm.
and then the pelagic. The pelagic, we get to see them nest right on the bluff, the bluff fronts up and down Sea Ranch. So they're our most familiar, my most familiar cormorant. Um,
Is there, Karen, I have a question. Is there truly a little bit of red patch right at their, where their bill goes into the fur?
there is, yeah.
Fur.
It goes,
Oh,
it,
fur.
yeah, no fur, just feathers. But and they've got a greenish blue, like a greenish purplish tint. And the Brants kind of have a more bluish tint. But all of this is a little bit subjective and gets brighter and more vivid in the breeding season. So the red is still going to be there. On immature birds, they're going to skew brown and you won't see that red patch so much. Then you really, it's that pencil thin bill. If you kind of look across these bills, um, and maybe even flight pattern. I should have put some flying shots in here too. A double crested has a
Big.
bulge in its neck. Brants tend to fly a little, I don't know, more regular and more. Diane, do they? Which I don't know. I see pelagic in flight more often that I recognize more than the Brants, but I think Brants have a pretty distinct flight pattern. I don't know how I would describe it though.
Right. We mostly see Brandt's cormorants on top of the arched rock down by Galleons or up on Wallala Point Island. And then as Karen mentioned, that a couple of little rocks at Solstice and other places. But the Brandts tend to like a bigger area to stay in. And the pelagics are used to hanging on to little narrow spots anywhere. So pelagic are more widespread. Brandts are more occasional spots.
And if it's, I mean, I've been watching them a lot in the last few weeks. I would, if you want practice, go to Solstice. And there are two stacks that are closer than any of those other rocks. I don't see them there all the time, but they've been very regular for the last few weeks. More Brants and a few pelagics. I haven't seen double crested there, but sometimes you get to see all three.
Mhm.
But anyway, they've been very happy on sunny mornings, right south of Solstice. Okay, now leaving the bluff edge. Corvids. These are our three most common. The two jays, this California scrub and the stellars, and the common raven. And I just wanted to point out, here's a crow, not a raven, and it's a little bit smaller, and it's got an asterisk too. They have been seen on Sea Ranch, but this would be considered an unusual sighting. So if calls are different, bill shape, tails are different too. I want to make sure I got this right. It's angular, right? When they're flying over, a raven would be angular. Is that right?
Sort of a diamond shape.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Of a
Yeah.
diamond shaped, and the crow is more squared off.
Yeah.
I've only ever known of one sighting of a crow at Sea Ranch.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's occasionally we get others here.
Yeah. I've seen there are few listed on eBird on that one. So you definitely want to look, but chances are you're probably looking at a raven.
Yeah.
And here are our lovely little wrens. We've got the Pacific wren, the Buick's wren, and the marsh. What's nice about this little collection is their habitat really varies. I think of the Pacific as heavily wooded, Buick's sometimes kind of forest front, and then the marsh wren kind of in wet areas. And then I am going to toss in one more, making it four. But again, this one is not a common one, the rock wren. That one would be one to look out for. I've seen them up near Del Mar, but not common.
And most of the sightings have been right at the coast in a rocky area, both just north of Del Mar Point and also down at Black and Byler Point.
Yeah, David has seen them there. Yeah, that's good. All right, here's some thrushes. The ubiquitous robin, the western bluebird, the hermit thrush, and the varied thrush. We got a lot of those last year, but not the norm. So that one will be one to look out for. And I wanted to include something, if you haven't looked at eBird, I would really encourage you to do that for a few reasons. They have a nifty new feature that's quizzes. You can even put in where you want to be specific. I think Mike might put a link in the chat. But you can say Sonoma County or Sea Ranch, and what it's going to have you do is go through people's photos. So like you got to give them a break. It's not perfect, but it's pretty fun to look and see. But what I want to call your attention to here is they have these bar graphs, and it shows the Western bluebird and the American robin here all the time. And then the other three really change. So you'll see the varied thrush and the hermit thrush are here in the wintertime. And then there's a gap. But take a look at the Swainson's thrush. I don't have a picture in the slide deck, but a hermit thrush and a Swainson's thrush look very similar, but they're here at different times. I think of the Swainsons being down in the Walala River, listening to the Swainsons on a summer morning is just lovely. And the Very Thrush also has a beautiful song, but that's what's here right now. So these are our 4 thrushes to look out for. And this one, hard to put a number. I mean, you could, but there's a lot of shorebirds. So let's just say so many. And these are the peeps and the things that you want to be looking out for. And if you're not really experienced, go easy on yourself. This will get easier the more you practice it. But leg color, believe it or not, is a good characteristic between the least sandpiper and the western sandpiper. But I've seen the least sandpiper hanging out in muddy areas at bodega, and it can look like it has black legs. So it's not always a surefire characteristic, but light legs is really a good indicator of a least sandpiper. The bill length and kind of heaviness is another one. And then also behavior. So in this slide with the sanderlings, you usually see more than one. Not always, but a lot of sanderlings, and they love to chase the waves. They'll run, as the waves come in, they'll run up and then they'll run back. And that's always fun to look at. I think of the places that I see the sanderling the most is at walk-on before folks come out with dogs and people so early. And here's a fun one that I like to include just because a lot of these shorebirds are out there and sometimes you don't even know it. Especially the killdeer, which I think would be, to me, it's so surprising because this bird has just outrageous coloring and it can just instantly disappear up in the drift the driftwood and things like that. But here are 3 shorebirds in the plover family that show up at Sea Ranch. The killdeer is here the most. The other 2 are less common, the semi-palmated plover and the snowy plover. I've seen the snowy plover on Sea Ranch a handful of times, and they've all been solitary birds here. If you really want to see these birds up at Manchester, they do nest there, so you would get a chance to see more. But it's very fun, and they're very small.
Karen, I see the killdeer on the bluffs above the beach, but the plovers you don't see up there, right?
That's a good point. No, I've never seen the other ones up above, but you do see killdeer regularly up above, down by Black Point and walk on. I've even seen them inland in parking lots. They're a strange bird that's comfortable in a lot of places, and they are with us, year round. They nest up in the Wallala River, and seeing the chicks in the spring is also just totally adorable. But yeah, that's a good point for that one. And you will hear them call, like their call is, they'll let you know they're there, where the other two really won't. And here's here's some shorebirds hanging out on a rock. I think these are all I'm kind of trying to just do a quick scan. I think these are all the same kind, not all the time. But when the waves are high and birds aren't feeding, the shorebirds aren't feeding, they are up on the rocks. And with the high waves that we've had recently, they've really been way up on the rocks and close to the trail. These the birds that were on those rocks were all black turnstones. But occasionally we get ruddy turnstones, and quite often surfbirds will be mixed in with the turnstones. They have the black turnstones have a pretty distinct little chatter that I really enjoy. But leg color here, again, overall color, bill color. The ruddy turnstone, that is at Sea Ranch. Actually, so that's taken right in front of your house. That was breeding season, so really, really vivid colors. They're not quite that vivid right now, but the orange legs do really stand out on this one. Here's a few more. The spotted sandpiper, you'll see those a lot. They fly so fast. So when you're gonna come to the edge and have a chance to see a spotted sandpiper, just slow down a little bit and then really be looking for a bird that's going to see you probably before you see it, and it's going to fly. You can settle back down on the beach and they will fly into the area, but boy, they spook easy. They also nest in our rivers. Then there's the wandering tattler. Both of those birds, the spotted sandpiper and the wandering tattler, kind of bob their bottoms up and down. And then the willet. Those, I don't have a picture. I should have put a picture of that one in flight. We see this one less. It's not a rarity, but we do see them. And I've seen a lot on Walk On this year. But when they fly, you'll see black and white on the wing. Really gorgeous black and white pattern. Of course, the oyster catcher, that should be I don't know, it's just such a fun bird. I think of it, it's ubiquitous too. Great call, great legs, great bill, great eyes, just a lot of fun. They breed here. And then the whimbrel, which has a very distinct bill and even leg color too, kind of bluey legs, but a long curved bill. I didn't put a curlew. Those are rarities. Those would show up as rarities. They look like whimbrels, but even a bigger curl to the bill.
Cheryl, where did you see the group of oyster catchers?
It was just south of Shell Beach.
And you had how many?
17 on one rock
Nice.
today. Yeah, it was a kick.
Nice.
So in
There's
the
a
winter,
lot of-
sometimes the oyster catchers will gather together. They may have come from farther places to the farther north and are just spending the winter with us. Or it may be that the youngsters and all are hanging out together with not much to do except look for food and interact.
Yeah, they do kind of clump on windy days and kind of the young ones. And there are a fair number of young ones right now. That's really good to see. And this one, okay, so not taken at Sea Ranch. Usually when I see the marbled godwit at Sea Ranch, it's a solitary bird. But I had to put this one as a plug for spend time in Bodega. This is so fun to see this many birds. And it happens kind of a lot there that you'll see so many of them together. It was shocking to me the first time I saw this many birds working a mud flat together.
Yeah, and there's the difference. We don't have much of anything that's a mud flat. We have a rocky shore, and that attracts certain types of shorebirds. Bodega Bay has the tide going in and out and no mud flat, and then a couple hours later, hundreds of feet of mud flat. So a much different collection of birds and really fun to visit.
Yeah. We were also out at Point Reyes the day after Thanksgiving, and there were a lot of marble godwits on the beach there. Same kind of just sandy, flat, sandy beaches. Just working the sands. And all right, so now we're switching to woodpeckers. And I was on a walk with Rich Trissel at Mill Bend, and he was saying, do you know how many woodpeckers we have? And it was fun to think of 6 woodpeckers and what stands out about them. So there's definitely a flight pattern. It's taken me a while. Oops. I just see okay, I see I messed up on some wording there with the flicker. Anyway, they have this flat flap and then glide. It's this undulating flight all across the woodpecker family. They'll do that. But the thing that I kind of want to call your attention to is, again, habitat. Primarily think of these as things in the woods, but that's not completely true with the flicker or the sapsucker. The other ones are primarily in wooded areas and really look different male to female, and kind of paying, if you're into that, really looking at where the red shows up and where the birds are and what they're doing. So let's just take a look at these. So I've learned a lot about woodpeckers this year, so it's been a lot of fun. But the red on a male is going to go on the crest is going to go all the way down the forehead to the bill. So a bigger patch of red. And then the mustache or the malar will be in red as well. That would be black on a female. And then take a look at the eye. The bird on the left that is a female, it's got a dark eye. That's a young bird. When they mature, they get that ring. So a female can have that ring too, the lightness in the eye, like the adult male on the right. So where's the red? And looking at the eye is a nice cue for this one.
Although you will not on the Christmas bird count need to distinguish males from females. All we need to do is count how many of each species.
Yes, that's true. I think I've been really getting into looking at male and female birds. And so I'm gonna just indulge me for a second here. It's the same with the flickers. This one, talk about a rabbit hole. So with the northern flicker, the red shafted is really common. And this is a bird that you really will see in forested areas and meadows. I've even seen them really close to the trail, the bluff trail. So if they've got color in the mustache or the malar, that's going to be a male bird. In the case of the red shafted, it's going to be red. They've got red under the tail, and when they fly, you'll see red under the wings. That's where the red shafted comes from. So the females on the left, they don't have any of that coloring on their face. But watch this, it gets weird. So here, do you see the red on the mustache or the malar? You can kind of see faintly the red on the tail of the bird in the center, that male. So the male and female are together, and then you see it in flight. But watch this. So here, this bird, do you see there's the bird on the right has black on the malar. That is a yellow shafted flicker. That shows up as a rarity. We've got them right now, and there are a few of them on Sea Ranch. So this would be a really good thing to be on the lookout for. But if they've got red on the back of the head, that tells you it's a yellow shafted. Black on the front in the male, red on the back of the head on either the male or the female. You don't always see it though, but like you'll see on the left, that one taking flight has distinctly more yellow. But watch this. So something funny happens. These two birds have red on the back of the head, so they should be yellow shafted, but it's clearly not yellow wings. And what happens is there's yellow shafted in the east, red shafted in the west, and then they have these intergrades or hybrids. So we've got yellow shafted and these intergrades on Sea Ranch right now. Both of these were taken, Teresa, near your house too. But so be on the lookout. And I know this is more in the weeds than you really want to be for the Christmas bird count. We just want flickers, or if you see some with the red on the back of the head, that would be good to count, because even if it's an intergrade or a yellow shafted, it would be good to know. And the yellow shafted will show up. It's going to ask if you do a list to give some information because it's a rarity.
And
All
would
right.
that be on eBird that you're talking about if you were doing a list?
Yes.
Yeah. And on our Christmas count, it's great to know if it's red shafted or yellow shafted, but they're northern flickers. So the
Correct.
species is still northern flicker either way.
Right. And they're loud and
And
squawky.
see, Karen has gone off the deep end over time.
Yeah. I've kind of gone off the deep end for a few varieties, and sparrows probably counts too. But so we have loads of sparrows, but I've put together the most common and we'll point out a couple of things. So here are three. The two on the left are even more common than the one on the right, but we've got a lot of golden crown sparrows right now. And the markings that you really want to pay attention to are bill color, kind of top of the head, breasts, like you'll see as we go through. But the song sparrow is always out singing. It's got a smudge on its chest and more speckly on the chest than the other two. It's kind of grayer and brown overall. The white crowned sparrow has a very bright yellow bill, both immature birds and mature. This one is a mature bird. And then the gold crowned has a grayer bill and a bit of gold that gets brighter in the breeding season. So it's not breeding season right now, but you'll still see yellow on the top of the golden crown. So if you take a look, this bird on the left is a white crown. So it's a young one. So it doesn't have a black and white that's really striking in the adult birds. So that's an immature bird. And then the one on the left, on the right, is a golden crown sparrow. Look at the difference in bill color and the yellow on the head. And these can be fun and annoying. So just the more you spend time looking at sparrows and really looking at those subtle distinctions. So here's one definitely be on the lookout for. It's an unusual one that I think looks a lot like the white crowned sparrow, but it's the white-throated sparrow. And take a look. The bill isn't yellow anymore. It's got yellow up above the eye and white in its throat. Other than that, I think it looks like a white-crowned sparrow. Then there's the Lincoln sparrow. I think this one, I think of it as being mostly in two places on Sea Ranch, but it's a fun one, and it's here now. I've been seeing them. They're buffy, kind of in the malar, kind of bright on the chest a little bit, and yeah, the yellow bill is gone. You know, they're just a beigeier bird, I think of them as being. And the Savannah sparrow, talk about habitat. I most often see these on the Bluff Trail on the west side of the Bluff Trail. Occasionally they'll fly over into kind of the coyote brush or lupin right on the other side of the trail, but they really stick close to the Bluff Trail. And they're brighter overall. Note the bill color and the breast color. They also, this particular picture doesn't show the yellow over the eye as much, but they have yellow over the eye, kind of like the white-throated do as well. Here's one that will not be anywhere near the Bluff Trail, the fox sparrow. I think of them as low to the ground, kind of preferring dark spaces with cover. This one hopped up on the fence post and was a real surprise. But they have a big bright eye with the eye ring. They've got a bicolored bill. And do they say those are crescent shapes? What are the speckles, Diane? Like they've just got a distinct,
Right.
yeah, like speckle on their chest, but they're often scratching in the leaf litter.
And it's
down-
a big sparrow, really
Yeah.
big sparrow.
Yeah. And they're here in the winter, so we don't see them year round. And here we have our junco. It really stands out with a dark head and that pink, bright bill and a bright chest. They also have some white in the tail feathers, you'll see. I don't have a picture that shows that, but kind of like the meadowlark and mockingbird, they have white bars in the tail. This one was a surprise to me the first time that a towhee is actually in the sparrow family. Very distinguishing markings, eyes and the spots and the color and the bill. But they are down in the duff, kind of kicking around similar to the fox sparrow. They do this like leap forward and scratch with their feet to eat things. And then this one, we also, I'm sort of calling our attention to the California towhee because we won't see this one as much. Sometimes I think there have been a few counts that it hasn't been seen at all, but this would be one to keep an eye out for. Behaves similarly to the spotted towhee, kicking around in the duff. The coloring is very different, and you can't tell in the photo underneath the tail, but there's orange there that that leaf or something it makes it a little hard to discern, but it does have orange underneath its tail there. So there they are, our 10 sparrows to be looking for. We should do a whole thing on sparrows because I've seen even more sparrows than this on Sea Ranch, but those all showed up as rarities. So these are the ones to be looking out for. And then I wanted to include this one and didn't know where to put it. So I was like, okay, not a sparrow. Looks like a sparrow, hangs out at the beach. It does this strut. It's got long legs and a little bit longer bill with a kind of a brighter brow mark too. But this is the pipit. It loves, as soon as the kelp starts washing ashore into the beach rock, it really loves to feed on the insects down there. You'll see Savannah sparrows hanging out with these too on the beach occasionally, but walk on is a pretty good place to see these. Here's another one to be on the lookout for. Now we're leaving the beach and going anywhere there are berries is a likely place to see cedar waxwings. We don't see these very often, but we do. Del Mar is a good place to see them around the gardens. And the things that I'm just calling your attention to is the head shape, that swoop, and the mask is a standout on these birds. They're just beautiful. They're just beautiful. They make a sound that I can never hear. Mike hears it, but I don't. And then that little waxed tip, the yellow on their tail. They even have some red too. You don't really see it in this one, but that's where they get their name from. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful birds. All right, 3 doves or pigeons. These are lumped together. but I think of them as very different in behavior. The mourning dove, we see less of those. We see more of the Eurasian collared dove. And right now, loads, I mean, loads of bandtail pigeons. I counted 37 fly over just a few days ago. So that was very fun to see. These forest and meadow on the bandtail. And then it's big. They're much bigger than the other two. And our sole hummingbird in the wintertime is the anise. And we have 3 in Sea Ranch overall, but the Allens and the Rufus aren't here in the winter. So if you see a hummingbird, chances are it's an anise right now. And now kinglets. So these two, good luck getting them in your binoculars or your camera long enough to ID them. No, they're very fast moving and fun little birds. There are a lot of both kinds right now. And the ruby crown kinglet does have red, but this is an unusual photograph. You'll see in a minute the way it looks most often. But the ruby crown has red on top and the golden crown has yellow, even with a little hint of orange when it gets really agitated. That sticks out. But here's what the ruby crown looks like the most often, the one on the left. And I put on this slide that it looks like a kinglet, the thing on the right, which is a Hutton's vireo. But there are some really subtle distinctions here. And they talk about a wide variety of things. The ones that I find most often are there's a darker smudge on the back of the wing bar on the kinglet. Light feet, which that only matters if you are looking at it in the right light. The feet is such a hard thing to tell. The bill is a little more pronged at the end of a Hutton's vireo, but I'm going to play a sound. It's really the call between these two that sets them apart. So that's the kinglet. And what I love about this, Rich Trissel said, it sounds like a typewriter. And I thought that was a really nice way to think about it. Although maybe more and more of us are becoming less familiar with what a typewriter sounds like. But and then here's the vireo, the Huttons.
So is that coming through for people to hear?
I hope so. For people hearing it? Yeah. Okay, good.
Yes.
And with that Huttons, it is over and over and over. Like once you start hearing it. And then one other thing to maybe say about the Huttons is they stand still a little bit longer. So if you got your binoculars on this greenish, yellowish bird and it's making a sound and you're able to count to 2 or 3 before it flies, there's a good chance that is a Hutton's more than a kinglet. The kinglet flits so fast. All right. Here's our geese. The cackling goose, Canada goose. This one, I don't know. Occasionally, I don't see the cackling geese that much, although they were flying over in the hundreds earlier in the year with migration. So they're not doing that the way they are, but they regularly land on the bluffs. I mean, I see them every year, just a few that have landed on our bluff tops, the cackling and the Canada. Cackling are more uncommon. They have shorter necks, the slope of the bill, and even the shape of the white patch. But it's like the kinglet, it's the sound. So I'm going to play a call for both. So here's cackling. And then here's Canada. I definitely think of it more as honking goose and then like chattery, chattery cackle. And that was not so easy for me to distinguish at first, but now I can definitely hear the difference. So here's our warblers in winter. The yellow rumps are back in full force, but so are the Townsends. I've been seeing so many of them. And even down along the bluff, I would have told you those are woodland birds, but I saw a pair just working their way through the ice plants a couple of days ago. So that was fun. The orange crown warbler, I almost wasn't even going to put them there, but I've seen about 6 lately. So I was like, okay, well, I'll put them in too. And then the yellow throats, I again, like the blackbirds with the meadow lark, I was surprised that technically a warbler. They do have a beautiful song, but very different habitats here for these. And then one thing that I did want to point out that threw me in the beginning, this is what a female yellow throat looks like. Very, very different. So I'll go back. Here's the male, and there's the female. So if you find yourself in a marshy area, intrigued by a bird song, and then a bird, you're like, what is that? That's happened to me more than once, but it's the yellow throat. The golf courses are a great place to see yellow throats. Now we're into the little birds upside down category. So pygmy nuthatches, red-breasted nuthatches, and occasionally, not very often, white-breasted nuthatches. All make really distinctive calls too, but all very different in color. White-breasted is bigger than the other two. And we see pygmy nuthatches more often than the red-breasted too. Yeah. Technically, I would put these kind of in the same category. They're not related to the nuthatch that I know of, but the brown creeper and the chestnut-backed chickadee also flit around, hang upside down. Maybe one distinguishing characteristic about the brown creeper is it kind of props itself up on its tail and it really works its way up trees. It's like it has no reverse. It'll go up, 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 and then fly down to a tree nearby, and then up, 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 up. But it's a really fun one. When it's really active, they've been very active at the little hedgerow by Solstice. And if you stand still when they're moving around, they can come pretty close. This one was very, very close. I didn't even have a long lens that day. Fun ones. Okay. If you want to take a break and don't even want to think about goals, you can think about this as your intermission. No, we're actually a little more than halfway, but I did my due diligence this year. I have started paying attention to gulls and all ages of gulls. I can't believe it. I used to just be unwilling to go there, but that's changed. So I will put in a plug for John Muir Law's one pager about gulls, because everything matters with these birds. The leg color, the eye color, the bill, like just everything, back, under the wings, tail, all of it. But it's fun to just concentrate on one, kind of get an anchor one, which is usually the Western. That's the one we have the most of, and then compare everything else, which is what we'll do in some photos. But if you don't have this one pager, I think Cheryl sends it out. Yeah,
We have it available.
it's definitely worth checking out. Yeah, you could put the link for it. But here's our Western, and the things as we go through, just even think to yourself, say it out loud, put it in the chat, like all of the things that stand out about these things. The underneath the wings, the black, there's kind of like It's like the black just bleeds down under the wings for these is what I've really started to think about. But they've got pink legs, and their bill has some red when they're adults. But these birds do nest at Sea Ranch, so you actually get to see their chicks and every phase of their maturity over the year. And I toss in this photo because when this happened, I couldn't believe. I knew westerns were big, but then it also made me think, wow, ospreys are small. But anyway, this one was just a funny moment up by Salal, and just surprising to see a western sitting next to an osprey eating. I think it was really trying to get the fish from the osprey, but it was being rather polite at that moment. Okay, here goes. So here is an adult Hermann's, and take a look. So the eye and there's got to be a term for this. I'm just going to say the skin around the eye is different. The bill color, very, very different on the Hermann's. In the adults, it's bright red. It's more of a salmony color in the immature birds. Dark legs and dark tail. Here you can see an immature and an adult in the Hermann's. They're so dark, the young ones, and they're a lot of fun to look at. You can usually see them hanging up out around Del Mar. And then when they're down feeding at Walk-On, it's fun to watch the dynamics of young birds and the mature ones together. And here's this bird used to be known as the mew gull. It's now the short-billed gull. But take a look. Dark eye, yellow legs, and thin, like really kind of petite bill. But it's also got, its tail is long. Its tail feathers stick out. And this one is almost an adult, I think. I think I might have another one of a immature, but take a look next to the ring-billed gull. Boy, and I didn't put these in because I thought it would just be cruel. A young ringbill versus a young shortbill. Huh, so hard to tell the difference. But the light eye on a ringbill is very distinguishing. And then it's got that dark, a little bit heavier bill than the shortbill and a ring around it. And yellow legs again. Their legs brighten up in breeding season too. So like leg color seems to stand out sometimes, other times a year more than that. So a California also has greenish, yellowish legs. But take a look at its eye is dark. It's also got some red on the bill. So black and red, bigger, heavier bill. And this one is a glaucous wing. We've got them hanging out at Walk-On right now. Dark eye, pink legs, and overall like gray on the back and gray in the tail. And then they will have red in their bill as well. And this one this one almost should have an asterisk. I've seen them up at Del Mar Point. That's where this photo was taken, and the black-legged kittiwake. So dark legs, smudgy spot on the head, and a light bill with a dark eye. And then now the view changed with the ring billed, but light eye and stripe on the bill. And now look at it compared to the herring gull. Light eye, thicker, a little bit heavier bill, but red on the bill and doesn't have that stripe. So if you get a sense, there's just a whole lot of variation with these birds. Here's back to the Western comparing. Red on the bill, dark on the back. Here's a Western ringbill comparison in flight. People who really get into this talk about the patterning on the end of the wings in the I can't remember if they call them windows on the wing too. I know they do on the tail. But here you can kind of make out. I don't think this is harder for me with binoculars. I can pick up, but do you see the feet? Pink and yellow, bill and eye differences. Here's that Western again. There's real darkness under its wings compared to, let's go back here. Well, that's in shadow. It's harder to tell actually with that one. Here's a good comparison. So the California, it's just brighter underneath. You see the little bit of yellow on the bill and sorry, red on the bill and yellow in the legs. And here's
Karen, this is
Yeah.
Doug Forcell.
Yeah.
It's probably just easier to know that the Western gulls are the only ones with all white heads in the winter.
Oh,
So everything else has, instead of trying
has some
to
color.
look at bills and things like that. Plus
Okay.
the size difference. Yeah.
Yes. And they all, I mean, technically, don't they all say they're white-headed, but it's the Western that's truly all white?
Western's the only one with white heads in the winter. The
Okay.
adults.
Yeah.
Young, of course. Don't.
Thanks. And then here, just more in-flight comparisons. The Bonapartes we don't see as often, but I've had great luck with them around walk-on, kind of annually. And then the glaucous wing and Western comparison. And then this one, I'm just calling your attention to, not a gull. So there's terns. There are a few different types. I think we're most likely going to see Caspian, unless Doug, I mean, you pay attention to terns more than I do. What would you say the percentage of our terns?
Well, most of them are Caspians, but they're all gone. They should all be in Central and South America.
Okay. I saw that we had some
around.
just stragglers. Yeah.
Yeah.
But terns are a lot of fun, more angular in the wings, and just really different bill size and color. Whoops. Okay. And hope we'll see some pelicans. I think there have been a few counts that maybe didn't have pelicans, but most often we do. So staying out on the water, we have 3 kinds of scoters. The ones that are in the shot, I don't know if you can tell, most of them don't really stand out, but here they are. Surf scoters, the white wing and the black. Definitely more surf than any, but good to keep an eye out for the other 2 as well. Here's a shot where you can see a male and a female surf scoter. It's that white on the back of the head and the color on the bill of the surf scoters that stand out the most to me. And then I put these 2 in just in for keeping an eye out. The redneck phalarope I've seen in the ocean, but more often I've seen them in the estuary and on the golf course. They have a funny habit of spinning around in circles. And then the murres on GPI and around there, you see them a lot, but they look very different in the winter. And I don't know if both North and South Coast see them very much, but I don't see them as much in the winter. And then with mergansers, I'm putting all 3 down. The red-breasted are the ones that we'll see out in the ocean the most. Well, even at all. I don't think I've ever seen the hooded or the common in the ocean, but we do see those quite often in the river. And I've seen the hooded on the golf course ponds, but I most often see them in the river. Look very different male to female with these, so I thought I would include those as well. And then ducks, they're even more than this, but when I first started, people really encouraged me to start with ducks. And I think that was good advice because they don't fly off quite as quickly as everything else does, but they're dabblers and divers. The divers are a little bit more challenging because they stay under the water and then maybe pop up in different places. But these birds are fairly regular. Probably the ones on the top you see the most often down at the estuary or in the ponds. But they're all fun to look at and beautiful, beautiful differences between male and female in the ducks. Also down at the estuary, but not only. I've seen kingfishers at Shell Beach quite regularly. So they're another fun, very characteristic call, fun looking bird. They look like bobblehead birds to me. And in the case of the kingfisher, it's the female that has that really pretty cinnamon color on the breast. Very beautiful, beautiful birds. Ponds, golf course, estuary for the coots and the soras. Even less often and more hidden, the Virginia rail, but it's always fun to get a look at these birds or hear them more often than seeing them. And then we're going into finches. So we started the Ron's image of the warbler and the goldfinch. So here is kind of what they're looking at, the goldfinches are looking like these days. But here are all of the collection of finches. The house finch, the purple finch, pine siskin, lesser goldfinch, American goldfinch, and the crossbill. The crossbill is the one that I should have put an asterisk on. That's not a guarantee and always fun to see. I've only seen them now twice on Sea Ranch. I have to go other places to find them. But there are others who are more expert at locating them on Sea Ranch than I am. So if you're in a group with me, chances are you won't see them. And then we've got our wren tit and bush tit, also fun calls on both of these birds. The bush tits are usually in groups. The wren tits often singular and in pairs, longer tail, but just as cute on the wren tit. And then with these, we were, Susan's question about the starling. My guess is what you were describing at the cafes were starlings. This is not a great shot, but it's more of a yellow bill. They're much more vivid certain times a year. Those white tips kind of wear away. But all of these birds have been introduced. So they show up with this funny introduced to the Sea Ranch thing when you go to enter them. We're getting more and more house sparrows. I'm seeing them around Olson now more regularly. Used to only see them in Point Arena or Wallala. And I just wanted to mention wild turkeys. I see them all over Sea Ranch, but when we were out at Cape May and I entered a wild turkey onto my eBird count, it showed up as a new bird. And it was a wild turkey that hadn't been introduced, which I thought was a surprise because I've entered them on eBird since I've been using eBird, and that one showed up differently. So East Coast wild turkeys in their native habitat, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I'll end with this one. The quail. I love the quail. And I can't remember, I think this happened this year, but I've probably told many of you about this encounter, but the little ones, it happens in the spring, but it was a remarkable encounter. A female quail kind of had scurried across the trail and there was a male just behaving really oddly. And it revealed these little chicks underneath. And they were, I mean, they were smaller. They were more like quarter sized. I can't believe how little, at least so little, and just so adorable. So that's it.
Wow, record time. Very good. Are there any questions from people?
I have a
Oh,
question.
mhm.
Karen, will you share the slides, or is there anything we can do to make a study guide?
Yes, so I'm going to make a PDF of the slide deck and can share that. And Mike will share a recording, and you can choose whichever one you like.
The other things that I'll just mention, and you can see if you've got other questions. So the bird count needs lots of eyes and ears. You can be a spotter. You can point out what you're seeing. You can record, and you can ID. So it takes a group of people to go out and search. And so anyone can participate. Don't feel that you need to know all the birds Karen just went through. That's one thing. We go out, we divide into 10 teams. They're broken up areas for all of Sea Ranch. So you may want to cover an area near your home with that leader, or you may want to go to a new spot and see what's there. We have a list by territory of what was seen last year in each territory. So if you know where you're going to go, you might want to look through that list so you have an idea of what birds to expect. Not that they can't move around and you get to see more. Always. And then we also have a count by year of all the birds that were seen on Sea Ranch during that count. And weather can change things, number of counters can change things, where the birds are. Some years we've had 90 pelicans and other years 0. So you just don't know for sure. We also have a copy of the gull sheet that we can provide if anybody wants it for now and future. And as Karen said, we'll definitely make this available if people want to go back and look at anything. So we've got also a couple of bird walks coming up. There was one this week. There will be another one on Sunday, December 8th for a little while, and again on Monday, December 16th. So you're welcome to join us on any of those. And the Christmas count itself is on Saturday, December 28th.
Yeah.
So we hope that you'll be around and can participate all day, part of the day. Whichever suits your schedule is fine. And then the next day on Sunday, the 29th, we'll do a short wrap up where different teams can report in what they've seen. And it's always fun to find out stories of the day as well. Cheryl or Karen, chime in with the other information if you have it, or if people have questions.
Yeah, well, I have 2 more slides. One is the slide of pointers. Just as you're going out, we are careful not to double count, which is something I didn't say about the turkey vultures. We only count them until 11 because they really start moving and soaring and things like that. But counting large flocks, that's always that's one of the reasons I love taking a camera. That's why I knew there were 37 bandtail pigeons. But you can also just kind of look at a few and then multiply it out. Some of the flocks can get really big, like starlings and blackbirds. I just took a picture of some blackbirds near albatross. I think there were probably easily 200 of them together. So those kinds of estimates are just good to practice with the larger flocks. And when you don't know what it is, which was me with gulls a lot, you can just list them as species. So when a group of 12 gulls fly by and you have no idea what you're looking at, it can be 12 gull spa, which is the species. And then if there are the unusual ones, Daryl, Cheryl, and Diane want you to give them a call because there are other folks that might want to come and look. That happened on my very first Christmas bird count, which was a shrike, which was very exciting. So a lot of people in other bird groups came to look at it. That was a lot of fun. And then there were a lot of things with notations for me. Those were just less common, but some the rarities like the ferruginous, a snowy plover, things like that. But also the cedar waxwings and the yellow shafted. And then Diane, the only other things, and I will, this one last slide. So Mike has put together pictures of birds in the different habitats for winter.
Nice.
I'll review some of those just on our little MPKW website.